With a voice that could command nations and a grace that redefined glamour, Diana Ross rose from Detroit's housing projects to become the queen of Motown, selling over 100 million records worldwide and dazzling audiences from the Supremes to her legendary solo reign. But behind the flawless gowns, the polished smile, and the golden microphone, there was a woman unraveling. A life marked by control, betrayal, and addiction, hidden behind the spotlight's blinding glow. She conquered the world, yet fought demons no one dared to see. Battles with alcohol, painkillers, and the crushing weight of perfection. How did the girl who gave a voice to a generation lose her own? And what secret drove Diana Ross to the edge of self-destruction? This is the full, never-before-told truth behind the rise, the fall, and the haunting beauty of one of music's most complex legends. Long before the sequins, the stadiums, and the platinum records, there was a fragile little girl named Diane Ernestine Earl Ross, growing up in the gray concrete maze of Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects. Her world was small, but loud. Crying babies, clanging radiators, and the thin walls that couldn't keep out her parents' arguments. When her mother fell gravely ill with tuberculosis, Diane was sent away to live with relatives in Alabama, an exile that carved the first hollow space inside her. It was the moment she learned that love could vanish overnight. When she returned home, the neighborhood had changed, and so had she. The other kids mocked her for speaking differently, for dressing with care, for dreaming too loud. Diana began to armor herself with perfection. Every hair, every gesture, every word was rehearsed. She refused to be ordinary again. Beneath the drive for fame was not ambition. It was fear. Fear of being unseen, unchosen, abandoned. In her teenage years, she found her sanctuary in music, sneaking into the makeshift studios of Motown Records, where Berry Gordy's empire was beginning to rise. But even there, she learned that affection came at a price. Maxine Powell's finishing school at Motown drilled the girls in posture, etiquette, and speech, teaching them how to be ladies acceptable to white America. It wasn't training, it was erasure. Diana, with her delicate voice and calm defiance, adapted perfectly. She learned how to become the version of herself the world demanded. Graceful, composed, in control, even when her heart was breaking. Her friends often said she didn't just sing songs, she performed survival. The applause that once felt like warmth slowly turned into validation she couldn't live without. Each ovation numbed the old wound a little longer, but never healed it. By the time the Supremes began to rise, the transformation was complete. The shy girl from Brewster Douglas was gone, replaced by a diamond mask named Diana Ross. Yet, under that glittering mask, the child who was sent away still whispered, and that whisper would follow her through every spotlight, every love affair, and every sleepless night. A reminder that fame could never replace the feeling of being safe. By the early 1960 seconds, the streets of Detroit were trembling with rhythm. A new sound was being born, one that promised escape. For Diana Ross, that promise became a lifeline. Alongside Mary Wilson and Florence Ballard, she formed the Primettes, a teenage group whose voices carried more hunger than harmony. But that hunger was enough to catch the attention of Berry Gordy, the ambitious founder of Motown Records. When Gordy signed them, everything changed, including their name, the Supremes. A single word that demanded attention. What began as three girls chasing radio dreams quickly turned into a corporate machine designed for perfection. Gordy saw something in Diana. Not just talent, but control. Her soft tone and camera-ready poise were the embodiment of Motown's vision, polished, respectable, and profitable. Behind studio doors, though, that vision came at a price. Diana's relationship with Berry Gordy deepened into something both intoxicating and dangerous. A mixture of mentorship, manipulation, and forbidden love. Gordy pushed her relentlessly. Voice lessons, choreography, interviews, posture correction. Every detail of her existence was curated. Florence Ballard, the group's emotional center, began to unravel under the pressure, feeling erased by Diana's growing spotlight. When Florence's drinking worsened, Gordy replaced her without hesitation. The Supremes became Diana Ross and the Supremes, a move that confirmed the shift from sisterhood to hierarchy. Diana didn't protest. She couldn't. To question Gordy meant risking everything she had built. Every standing ovation, every magazine cover, every dream of escaping the housing projects, it all depended on his approval. So she smiled, performed, and learned to silence her guilt. The world saw a goddess. Inside, she was negotiating her worth daily, trading pieces of her soul for applause. By 1969, the Supremes were the most successful female group in history. 12 #1 hits, over 20 million albums sold, and Diana Ross's name shimmering above them all. She was now a symbol of elegance and ambition, breaking barriers for black women in entertainment. But success had transformed her into something unrecognizable to those who once knew her. Mary Wilson later recalled that Diana stopped calling, stopped laughing. It was like she became someone else entirely. I quote, "When she finally left the Supremes in 1970 to launch her solo career, the moment was both liberation and funeral. Her debut single, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, soared to no. Won on the Billboard Hot 100, earning her a Grammy nomination and cementing her as a solo powerhouse. Yet the higher she climbed, the lonelier the air became. On stage, Diana was incandescent. Gowns brushing the floor, hair cascading like light. Offstage, she was learning the cost of being the image. The industry wanted a flawless icon, not a flawed woman. Publicists monitored every appearance. Stylists dictated every color she could wear, and even her romantic life was weighed against public perception. She began to believe that to stay adored, she must stay in control. Always smiling, always composed, never angry, never tired. The sacrifice was subtle, but immense. Her privacy, her friendships, her ability to trust. When her relationship with Berry Gordy ended, it left more than heartbreak. It left a silence. He remained her professional guardian, but emotionally, she was adrift. To the world, she looked untouchable. To herself, she felt replaceable. The mask she had crafted so carefully during her youth was now permanent. And beneath it, the child who once feared abandonment was trapped again, this time in diamonds and spotlight glare. By the mid-1970 seconds, Diana Ross had become one of the most powerful women in entertainment. A multimillionaire, a film star, a mother, and yet perpetually unsatisfied. The higher the numbers rose, chart positions, awards, salaries, the deeper the ache inside her grew. She was chasing applause as if it were oxygen, but the more she inhaled, the less she could breathe. In private, she began seeking escape in quieter, darker ways. The first whispers of late-night drinking, the exhaustion disguised as creative breaks. To her team, she was simply refining her image. To those who truly looked, she was beginning to fracture. The perfection she had built was too heavy to carry. The woman who once sang about mountains now faced her own. Invisible, immense, and closing in. And though the world saw her as the definition of success, Diana Ross was beginning to understand the cruelest irony of all. The higher she rose, the more she lost the freedom she had once craved. By the time the 1,970 seconds shimmered into the 80 seconds, Diana Ross had the world kneeling at her feet. She was a film star, a solo icon, and a global brand. But the higher her light burned, the darker her private life became. A tangled web of love, guilt, and secrecy that no publicist could polish. Her first marriage to Robert Ellis Silberstein was supposed to anchor her. He was kind, successful, stable. Everything Berry Gordy wasn't. But the union began under a shadow. Diana was already pregnant with Rhonda, a child fathered not by Silberstein, but by Gordy himself. Out of loyalty, or perhaps protection, Silberstein agreed to raise Rhonda as his own. For over a decade, the truth was hidden behind immaculate smiles and holiday portraits. Diana, who had spent her life crafting illusions on stage, was now living one at home. When she finally told Rhonda the truth at age 13, it shattered something deep within both of them. For Diana, the confession felt like both a release and a reckoning. Another mask removed, another wound reopened. For Rhonda, it was a strange inheritance to realize that her life began as a secret designed to preserve an empire's image. As the marriage crumbled, Diana sought solace in another illusion. Love that felt like rescue. The next years were a carousel of fleeting romances, from Smokey Robinson, whose charm was matched only by his own demons, to Gene Simmons of Kiss, whose leather-clad bravado disguised a genuine affection that couldn't outlast fame. Yet each relationship seemed to repeat the same pattern, men drawn to the legend, not the woman beneath it. Then came Arnast Jr., the handsome Norwegian shipping magnate who seemed like a fairy tale rewrite. Their 1,986 wedding in Switzerland was a spectacle. A princess reborn, surrounded by snow and wealth. For a while, she appeared radiant again. They had 2 sons, and for the first time in years, she spoke about slowing down, finding peace. But peace was temporary. By the late 90 seconds, cracks began to show. Arn's business ventures faltered. Tabloids whispered about infidelity. The truth, as it emerged, was crueler than gossip. He had fathered a child with another woman, Camilla Astrup, shattering Diana's fragile faith in the idea of lasting love. When the news broke, she didn't explode. She withdrew. Those close to her recall nights of silence, long phone calls unanswered, and glasses of wine left half-finished by the piano. The woman who once commanded entire arenas now struggled to command her own emotions. She began drinking more. Not in wild abandon, but quietly, almost methodically. A glass to sleep, another to numb, another to forget. The glamour that once surrounded her became armor again, shielding a growing despair. In interviews, she smiled, repeating phrases like, "I'm stronger than ever," or "I'm blessed." But her eyes betrayed her. There was a heaviness there, a sadness too polished to be accidental. When Arn left, he took not just love, but also the illusion that success could ever guarantee safety. Diana's world, once glittering and infinite, began to shrink. Those who worked with her during this time described subtle changes. She was still professional, still punctual, but distant. She'd stare into mirrors between takes, fixing imaginary imperfections. Some days, she refused to speak for hours. Other days, she'd break into sudden tears, then laugh as if nothing had happened. The cracks were no longer invisible. They were part of her performance. The betrayal of Arne Nass wasn't just a failed marriage. It was the culmination of every unhealed wound she had carried since childhood. Abandonment, control, performance, illusion. The girl sent away because her mother was sick, the woman molded by Motown's perfectionism, the wife hiding a secret child. All of them collided in this one heartbreak. When she finally divorced Arn in 2000, Diana Ross was once again alone. This time not as a symbol of independence, but as a survivor of her own legend. The world still saw a diva, timeless and untouchable. But beneath the silk and diamonds, her heart was bruised, her spirit fraying. In a cruel twist of fate, Arn Nass would later die in a climbing accident in 2004. A man who loved summits, falling to his death from the side of a cliff. It was poetic, tragic, and eerily reflective of the woman he left behind. Another soul who had spent a lifetime climbing toward perfection, only to find the air too thin to breathe. Fame had once been Diana Ross's sanctuary. By the turn of the millennium, it had become her cage. Every smile now looked rehearsed, every step through an airport haunted by flashbulbs that no longer adored her. They hunted her. The woman who had once reigned over charts and concert halls now found herself cornered by whispers of decline, addiction, and fragility. It began quietly. The glasses of wine before bed became bottles. The painkillers prescribed for a back injury after years of touring became a daily ritual. She told herself it was for the pain, not realizing that the pain had never been physical. By 2002, Diana checked herself into Promises Rehabilitation Center in Malibu, the same luxury facility that had treated Hollywood's most broken stars. Publicly, her team described it as a brief stay to rest before touring. Privately, it was an intervention. Friends had grown alarmed by the emptiness in her eyes, the trembling in her hands, the cognac she poured into her morning coffee as if it were cream. That same year, the facade cracked. One December night in Tucson, Arizona, she was stopped by police for driving erratically. The breathalyzer read 0, 20, over twice the legal limit. For the first time in her life, Diana Ross was no longer the one commanding the stage. She was behind bars, photographed, cataloged, and reduced to a number. In a mugshot that the tabloids devoured, the sparkle was gone. What the world saw as scandal was, for her, simply exposure, the truth finally catching up. Reporters called it the diva's fall. But what no headline captured was the quiet terror inside that holding cell. A woman who had spent 5 decades sculpting control, suddenly realizing she had none. The perfectionist who once demanded absolute order now sat in a paper gown, sobering up under fluorescent lights. There were no mirrors, no microphones, no applause, only silence. Her lawyers handled the sentence, a 2-day jail term and 1-year suspension of her license. Yet the emotional sentence lasted far longer. When she emerged, her once flawless image was fractured. Concert promoters hesitated. Endorsements faded. In a cruel twist, the same public that had worshipped her poise now delighted in her humiliation. But beneath the shame, something unexpected stirred. A reckoning. For years, Diana had been performing survival, but this time, she wanted to live it. After completing rehab, she began a slow, unglamorous journey toward recovery. The tabloids ignored it. There was nothing scandalous about a woman trying to save herself. Still, the battles continued. Some nights, she relapsed. Not always with alcohol, sometimes with isolation. Her children, especially Tracy Ellis Ross, became her anchors. Tracy once said in an interview, "My mother is my mirror. Everything I understand about power and vulnerability, I learned from watching her rise and fall." That relationship, mother and daughter, both performers, both perfectionists, became Diana's final classroom. Yet the ghosts never fully left. When Arnie Nass Jr. died in a climbing accident in 2004, Diana was devastated. Their love had ended in betrayal, but death erased anger, leaving only grief. At his memorial, she sang softly under her breath, not for the audience, but for herself. Later, she admitted to friends that she could still hear his voice in dreams, and that sometimes she woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. As the years passed, the press framed her as a relic, a glamorous echo from the Motown era. But Diana refused to fade quietly. She toured again, not for the money, but to reclaim her narrative. Each show became an act of penance and resurrection. When she performed Ain't No Mountain High Enough in London in 2007, she didn't just sing it. She lived it, her voice trembling on the line. "If you need me, call me, no matter where you are." It sounded less like a love song and more like a message to herself. But even as her body aged, her battle with control lingered. There were reported incidents, sudden mood swings, clashes with staff, and one infamous airport altercation in 1999 when she accused a female security officer of inappropriate touching and retaliated by touching the officer's chest, saying, "How do you like it?" It was defiance disguised as pain. A woman tired of being handled. By men, by the press, by the system. In later interviews, she spoke softly, almost apologetically, about her younger years. "I wanted everything to be beautiful," she said, "but sometimes beauty costs too much." It was perhaps the most honest sentence she ever gave the world. Today, Diana Ross stands as one of music's last surviving monarchs. More than 100 million records sold, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and a legacy that shaped generations of female artists. Yet her true story isn't in the numbers. It's in the silences between them. The child sent away, the woman loved and betrayed, the icon who numbed her loneliness with applause. Her downfall wasn't one single event. It was a lifetime of small fractures hidden beneath sequins. Every sip, every pill, every sleepless night was a quiet rebellion against the image the world demanded her to be. But the miracle is that she survived it. Not untouched, not unscarred, but awake. In the end, Diana Ross's greatest performance was not on a stage, but in her fight to exist beyond it, to forgive herself, to live without pretending, to finally sing, not for approval, but for peace. Because behind the gowns and Grammys lies the real untold story, that sometimes survival itself is the most haunting song of all.